We were looking ahead to the next 3 to 5 years, knowing that we had to do this kind of operational turnaround. We were pretty exposed in some of our compliance obligations, and we also had this great opportunity for growth that was going to require fundamentally a huge expansion in the number of people employed at ECMS. And we knew if we were going to embark on this period of growth, which is probably going to be 10 plus years worth of growth, we needed to have real solid systems and processes in place, particularly around our people. So we're a service-based organisation. Our work is only as good as the people we bring in and keep. So it's very much a central part of our strategy. So we're a not-for-profit provider of early childhood education in Melbourne. We run 75 kindergartens and long daycares across Melbourne, mainly focusing on areas in growth areas around the outskirts of Melbourne, particularly in areas of experienced disadvantage, and often with very diverse communities, some of which with kind of complex backgrounds. So we've been around for about 28 years. We have approaching kind of 1,200 staff now, and we primarily work with state and local government as our landlords and main partners. So my role has changed a little bit. So I started life at ECMS as the Director of People and Strategy, very much with a transformation agenda, which I'm sure we'll come to later in the podcast.
Absolutely.
And over that time, it's evolved to pick up other aspects, including the growth agenda, managing our portfolio of services. This is a good segue to Amanda. No longer the Director of People, so I just manage our strategy and our growth agenda.
My time at ECMS commenced shortly after Stu. I believe it was in my first interview you said something about we might need some new systems. So I joined as the People Services Manager. That role looked after all of our policies, systems, processes, all of the things that are foundational to employee experience. And towards the end of last year was when I took over, at first in an acting capacity, the Director of People role, but now permanent. So
it kind of takes us back a few years before that. So I arrived into ECMS in the back end of 2020, which is a year we'd probably all like to forget. And the context of which I arrived was a organisation in a certain amount of financial distress, requiring what I describe as a financial, cultural, and kind of operational turnaround, which is what the journey we've been on over the last 5 years. And some of the features of that was probably we're a not-for-profit. And so over the prior decade, there's been a lot of turnover in leadership roles, a lot of underinvestment in the kind of core systems and processes. So there was a kind of bit of a kind of operational context that needed to be worked through, but we're also part of a government sector reform in early childhood where there were big growth opportunities ahead for ECMS, the expansion of kindergarten in Victoria being a big one. So we were looking ahead to the next 3 to 5 years, knowing that we had to do this kind of operational turnaround. We were pretty exposed in some of our compliance obligations, and we also had this great opportunity for growth that was going to require fundamentally a huge expansion in the number of people employed at ECMS. And we knew if we were going to embark on this period of growth, which is probably going to be 10 plus years worth of growth, we needed to have real solid systems and processes in place, particularly around our people. So we're a service-based organisation. Our work is only as good as the people we bring in and keep. So it's very much a central part of our strategy. One thing I'd say about the business case is it took us probably 12 months to write it. And that wasn't the document. It was all the work that we needed to do. So we engaged Pinpoint in kind of first quarter of 2022, and we didn't take it to the board until first or potentially even second quarter of 2023. So in that time, we knew the problem we were trying to solve. We knew the opportunity ahead of us. We spent a lot of time developing our requirements, doing a lot of groundwork with teams and our exec. And also we were simultaneously kind of working through strategic imperatives as well. So the business case I would describe as a kind of a fairly balanced business case across looking to achieve outcomes that talked to all of our strategic imperatives.
Yeah.
So we did talk about compliance and risk. We have a large, heavily regulated workforce that we have compliance obligations. So that was kind of one we needed to cover. We talked about growth and what we needed to enable, kind of volume of recruitment, onboarding, career pathways, progression, and so something that was going to grow with us. We also talked a lot about the employee experience. That's been very central to our strategy and our theory of change around we are a people-centric organisation, working directly with children and families. So we needed something that moved the activity from heavily manual, paper-based activities and tasks to more automated, seamless, so we could shift the type of work, particularly of our people leaders. So that was the kind of spread across what we were seeking to do with the business case.
I would say yes to all of those things. And the other bit for me that probably we didn't consider when we first started talking about HR systems was we did eventually, through that extensive process that we went through with Pinpoint, make a decision to include within the scope payroll function, which actually was quite a big decision and an enabling decision, because it kind of took everything from like our systems from start to finish, and it was about enabling our leaders and our people to be able to do things with the systems that they hadn't previously. So improving their experience, improving the efficiency of our processes across both the payroll and the people teams, which were separate functions. And now are rolled up into one team.
I think the short answer to what was probably a lot more involved thinking and work was the alignment between our strategy and what we were looking to achieve as an organisation, and the role that, first of all, people, but then systems enabling people would play in that. And so one of the things that I reflected on in preparation for this conversation was our maturity matrix. And we ran through a process with Pinpoint where we looked at the different kind of components of our people strategy and kind of assessed where we were, where we needed to be, kind of, I guess, in the long term, and then how we calibrated that. And what was interesting is we started off by going, we need to be 5 in everything. And we were really bold with where we wanted to be. And then we kind of pragmatically just kind of wound that back. So actually, there are certain elements of our system that we just need to be functional. We just need to have the ability to automate, or we just need a process adoption, for example. The system needs to do this. But the ones that we held on to were learning, recruitment, and onboarding. And then we held firm to those being kind of 5. Because what we knew is that was our future. We knew that when scale comes, we knew that when the workforce challenges really peak, we're going to need to tap into volume recruitment, quality recruitment, experience of onboarding, and learning and pathways. And so that kind of reflected very much our strategy, that we knew the future was building capability of people, attracting people in a very competitive talent marketplace. And so there was this real alignment between what we're looking for in a system and what our strategy said. I was relatively comfortable with the business case. We'd done a lot of thinking, and the decision was evidence-based, and I felt solid. I think a big part of the investment was our decision, not only in what were the right vendors for us, but also how we were going to deliver the project. So I'd say 50% of the cost was, if not more, was resourcing a team. And so one of the things that to mitigate my feeling of kind of stress for the accountability was we're not going to regret anything in terms of how we build the team, what roles we need. So we were very much in the early days with Pinpoint, kind of asking questions around why do projects fail? Like, you must see this all the time, to tell me the reason, and kept coming back to a couple of things. Once you move beyond vendor selection, which I think is really important, we potentially touch on that. Resource the team, don't skimp, and think deeply about your change management. And so we built a team around some of those core principles of change management. We made sure it was taken off the desks of the BAU teams. So we had a very dedicated project team. So that kind of gave me a lot of comfort as a sponsor, that we could deliver on this fairly large mandate. So we engaged Pinpoint, like I said, about a year out from submitting the business case eventually to the board for approval. We're probably going to tag team this one because I'll skip past a few things, I suspect. So there was an element of just understanding our needs and our requirements. And that was a really interesting process because we started with strategic objectives of the organisation, and we ran that to ground with some very detailed use cases, which was probably one of the most valuable exercises we did. It knocked out a couple of vendors because in a very complex IR environment, we needed very specific use cases being met. So there was elements of that. There was also a lot of engaging with our internal teams, identifying kind of key champions or kind of key information holders. And then the big bit was obviously vendor selection and understanding the market.
I would also add, and this popped into my head when you were talking about planning for the project itself, was part of the benefit of going through that very broad stakeholder consultation period where we kind of, started off by talking about what are our current pain points, but also focusing on future, what kind of capability level do we want to achieve with our HR and payroll functions. By having such a broad group of stakeholders involved throughout that process, which was facilitated by Pinpoint, we kind of built buy-in right from the get-go. And what came out of that process, which we kind of already knew going into it, was I'm going to say there's a lot of trauma within the organisation from previous failed system implementation. So not just HR and payroll systems, but various other systems. The ECMS in the past has not landed well. And so in addition to making sure that we, resourced the team appropriately and took advice from Pinpoint, we actually took advice from our own people about their experiences, what worked, what didn't work. And then we made sure that in, doing the sell, explaining the story about why we're doing this and why it's important and why the way that we're going about it is different to before. It's because we've taken on board all of that feedback. We've learned our lessons. And that's why we were able to get such good buy-in early on before we even kind of stepped into that implementation phase. So it was probably post the first demo. So we did have a pretty, as I said, broad group of stakeholders that we brought along, as I said, right from the get-go. So discussion about pain points, desired future state, and then we invited them in to actually witness the demonstrations for the various vendors. And I remember doing, my round of phone calls, follow-up to various leaders across the organisation who participated to get their feedback. We did seek their feedback via surveys, but I also, wanted to kind of continue building those relationships. And I remember getting off the phone or having a phone conversation with one of our nominated supervisors in particular, and she was just raving about the learning the learning module within Cornerstone and, how seamless it was and how, like she could see all of the potential within the system. And for me, I was like, well, it's pretty rare to get someone who's not a systems person to get excited about a people system and see the possible value and benefit that it could provide. So that, for me, was probably the moment where I was like, that sounds like this is where we're leaning towards over some of the other vendors. And going back to Stu's point earlier about our HR maturity model and the fact that we really wanted to get to, I guess, sort of peak capability in the recruitment, onboarding and learning spaces, I was like, well, that's kind of, it's hitting those boxes quite comfortably.
And I think there's an interesting thing around the Cornerstone selection in particular, where in the kind of sequencing and phasing of our maturity journey, Cornerstone actually provides the future, and we had to actually get comfortable that we were going to heavily underutilize the system in the first 12, 18 months. And only now we're really starting to think about how we optimize Cornerstone. And I think that goes back to the business case around we weren't making a decision for what's the time frame right in front of us. We were making a long-term decision, knowing that there were bits that needed to fall into place early that were, particularly around core HR. So we needed like security and clarity of our kind of core data. We needed to get payroll in place. We needed time and attendance in place because they were things that were kind of burning now. But if we could have easily stopped there, we decided to take a broader view of the decision and really buy for the future. So we talk a lot about growing well and growing sustainably and doing that in a way that like leverages our greatest asset, our people. I think Cornerstone is the perfect example of growing well, where we just have patience for that next few years.
So look, it's early days, and I'm going to preface this by saying, every time you implement a change, particularly one this big, there's going to be highs and lows, but there is some stuff that is really exciting, which is what I'm going to focus on. One of the key things that we kind of wanted to address was in regards to our payroll function, reducing the kind of the admin burden and the repetitive nature, duplicate entry, human error, risk of human error, etc. in the payroll space. So what we've seen is, so we've grown headcount from when we started this project to now. So we've gone from roughly 700 employees to, she was saying, over 1,100 now. In terms of payroll, our processing of timesheets per pay fortnight has gone from 650 to 1,100. So we've essentially almost doubled the number of timesheets we're processing. The payroll team itself has remained the same size. So there's quite a lot of efficiency that we've seen come out of the system in that respect. Employees are able to apply for their own leave for the first time. I can't tell you how much of a big deal that is. As well as self-service, and accessing their own information, updating their information, accessing their pay slips in live time. So it is creating, I suppose, a little bit of work in terms of requiring responsiveness of the team, but they're actually being able to have conversations with people, address people's concerns rather than just sitting in a computer processing. So it's kind of changing the nature of the work that they're doing. So taking time away from non-value add to more value add activities. And the thing about payroll is it's a hygiene piece. So no one says anything when you get it right, but you definitely hear about it when you get it wrong. So absolutely it is enhancing the experience in that respect, and it's giving people, the fact that there is an app, it's a digital platform that previously we didn't have. Obviously, this is almost something that people expect at work now. In terms of our recruitment and talent, so I know that the team themselves have been incredibly pleased with the efficiencies we've seen in our internal processes. So having a single system instead of multiple systems to go all the way from people applying for jobs to being an employee has seen, I guess, the team being able to, again, spend less time doing the systems work and more time talking to people, talking to candidates, supporting managers, so more value add work. So every year, December, January, we hire a whole group of new teachers and educators for the following school year. So we actually managed to, despite the fact that we'd only just implemented a brand new system, the team was still learning at the time. We got over that recruitment peak a lot earlier than we have in previous years. Another exciting thing is that with our transition to a rostering system that the managers are essentially using themselves, a digital rostering platform that we didn't previously have. The number of shifts that we have that are filled by our internal casual pool has increased by 10 to 15%, which means that we're actually spending quite a bit less money on agency employees. So we're making quite a large amount of savings in that respect, which is really positive. And it's really good for the programs itself, because if we're using our own employees, our own pool of people, the children are having more consistent educators in the program, and it improves the quality of the programs that we're able to offer and services as well. So that's positive for employees and for the children and families as well. Retention was, I guess, something that we were hoping to achieve by virtue of improving the employee experience and engagement. So our turnover has been trending downward. I mean, that's a trend that we've seen over the last couple of years. It's continued post-implementation of these systems. The exciting bit about that is we're actually, I mean, compared to others within our sector, turnover is about 22% average. We're sitting at about 10%, which is pretty incredible. Systems are one part of it, but I think it speaks to our commitment to our people and our focus of having people at the core and the centre of what we do. The nature of our work is, at the end of the day, relational. So I'm going to say the system supports this by taking time away from the non-value add activities and allowing people to interact with people. So people do the people work and the systems do the system work. It's actually genuinely exciting that we get to ponder that now. Where we were sitting at before phase one is we're in a situation where there was all of this potential growth coming, and the systems and processes that we had in place were almost like a barrier or a hurdle to overcome, and, you know, limiting our thought processes around how can we innovate, how can we try to do things differently to achieve what we need to achieve. So what phase two looks like is essentially like all the rules are out the window. One of the things that I think is going to be really important now and moving forward is consideration of system admin as a role, because I do think there is a lot of opportunity within the system, Cornerstone in particular, a lot of functionality that we haven't touched yet that we want to slowly incorporate into our ways of working. I'm primarily thinking about, at this point, within our own people team, to evolve our recruitment and talent processes in particular. And then also there's this kind of piece with our leaders and really kind of utilising the systems to improve their capability as well. And I know this is not unique to early childhood, but most of our people leaders are teachers. So it's not, the work of leading people isn't necessarily something that they have been trained in. It's just something that has kind of fallen to them. So there's certainly an opportunity to leverage our systems to support really building that capability. And that, I think, is our opportunity to set ourselves apart as an organisation within our sector, because, I mean, everyone knows the importance of leadership in employee experience and engagement.
Because we've gone through a period, we've done some retrospective processes about how we've done some of the technical learnings of how you deliver kind of system at scale, and there are emerging metrics that are going to come out of having a better infrastructure for data, and so some of our reporting is going to be improved. But in terms of the playback to exec, it's actually when Amanda was talking, I was thinking like, and this is a bit off topic to Cornerstone in particular, but it having delivered this project well and seen the benefits that Amanda's talked about, it's been a blueprint for other teams to think about the problems they're solving and the role of systems and technology, automation differently. And it's kind of given us a bit of organisational confidence that we can take on large-scale technology-backed transformation that improve a range of outcomes, from kind of compliance metrics to financial metrics to experience to kind of volume metrics. So it's kind of given us organisationally that confidence, and I think we're going to be drip feeding some of these outcomes back into the exec. One thing that we didn't touch on when talked about the business case is we were quite restrained in our business case in terms of the metrics we promised. We took a bit of an approach where we don't want to overpromise, underdeliver. Every project before us kind of had a variation of like, yep, this is going to be great, we're going to nail it, and it fell over or didn't quite hit the mark. And so we were like, let's just pull it back. Let's be really clear on what we're aiming for, the kind of outcomes, but just wind back the metrics. So one of the things that Pinpoint and ourselves had was a real debate around financial metrics. And it was ultimately our call to kind of not include those in the business case. And it was a bit of a risk. We have a CFO like everyone else does. But we felt like we were reaching. We didn't, we knew that something would impact financially. We knew there will be cost savings. Amanda's talked about agency cost reducing. We can now have visibility on rosters. We know that like time to fill, therefore recruitment capacity. So we know those metrics will come, but we didn't want to put them forward because we didn't want to set ourselves up for a very reductive assessment of success. We wanted to keep the conversation and keep the decision at a kind of higher, more strategic level. And now when we drop in a improvement that's data backed, it feels like a bonus, which keeps the momentum building post go live, which I think is really important. And one thing that the project team were really hot on was talking about not necessarily kind of go live as the end, but go live as the start. And so we'll see our business case effectively evolve. And in some cases it will match exactly what we thought would happen. And in some cases there'll be unintended positive outcomes that we're yet to necessarily have the data to back it up. But that storytelling doesn't stop. Yeah, absolutely. And I would say it wasn't completely void of financial metrics. We had to. There was a big rationalization exercise at the same time. So we had 7 or 8 kind of legacy systems that all kind of incrementally added up to actually a similar kind of subscription price, but with very little efficacy in terms of what we would get from a updated system. And then we had to justify the project size, project team size. But in terms of challenge from like not having financial metrics, we did get some pushback. We got some robust questions from our board as well. And we were able to point to experience of other providers who've done similar exercises, particularly if you take payroll. So one of the things we did discuss is that I wouldn't say we had no idea, but we didn't know. Are we underpaying or overpaying? And it only takes a few cents in the dollar either way for that to add up over 1,100 staff. And so there was a bit of a theory, philosophy that, like, let's get the data first. We were pretty confident in our award interpretation, we think. I think we're now slightly stronger in that confidence. And so there was a couple of kind of aspects where we kind of said, well, it could be 0, it could be kind of all the way to like X, I don't know. So I think what the transition in the leadership and the evolution of both of our roles have demonstrated for me a few things is the importance of consistency in leadership roles. I don't know this for a fact, but I imagine one of the reasons a lot of the projects didn't quite get up in the past is because we had this high turnover of leadership. So even the transition from me to Amanda had project success in mind. Now, that was only one factor. Amanda is exceptional and she deserves the role. And it made sure that someone new coming in didn't come in with a whole different perspective on what a system can and can't do, what system they might have a preference for. And so that was really about building some of that momentum and not losing it. For my role, I kind of lean in now to the other aspects of our strategy around really pushing on the growth agenda. So we're very fortunate in early childhood that we've got a government-backed reform, particularly at state level, where the expansion of kindergarten is going to provide great opportunities for us and are now really well positioned. So it's about now taking the work that we've done and using that as an asset. And that includes the system. And that's so, for example, we submit tenders to take on new centres. One of the things that all levels of government are really hot on is data security and privacy compliant ability to compliance, but also increasingly they want to know that we can scale and we can scale well. So when you have a state government putting tens of billions of dollars into reform, they want to know that providers have the infrastructure to scale too. And so this is a ideal, perfect example of an organisation like us of investing ahead of time to then give you the opportunities for that growth. So never thought, I personally would never thought like a system would give us that competitive advantage. We knew that people do. We knew that our thinking around how children learn and engagement with communities were. But this was a bit of a surprise to me at how much that's going to be an advantage for tenders.
My head first goes to, and this is a uniquely Cornerstone thing. So when we first went through the demo with Cornerstone, I was asking about position management, which was not a functionality that Cornerstone had at that point in time. We actually, partway through our implementation, we were early adopters of position management in Cornerstone. And so I guess being able to roll that functionality out and have it available even just within our own team is a pretty big deal for us, because it's kind of enabling some work around workforce planning, which is going to be really foundational for us as we grow over the next couple of years. And I'm really interested to see how Cornerstone evolve that module particularly, and how it's going to filter through all aspects of the system over the next couple of years. I'm also really excited to tap into some of the talent functionality, so talent marketplace, capability mapping, all of that. So this is not functionality that we've ever had in a system before, and I see that as like the next step for our team in building capability and understanding our workforce and supporting our workforce to grow. In the sector that we're in and this time that we're in, it's going to be as much about building talent within our organisation as it is about bringing people in. I see the system as a really core tool supporting that. I mean, at the moment, we recruit to, I'm going to say, 300 to 400 vacancies every year, and most of our appointments are actually internal, so more than half. So we have quite a lot of internal movement of people either moving locations or changing hours. and that sort of thing. So having a system to support that, I'm going to say for the first time, because previously we did a lot of this on Excel spreadsheet, to first of all track that movement, but second of all understand the skills that people have, their level of interest in training and upskilling, and really supporting people to kind of take that journey. And our purpose is about lifelong learning. Obviously, you know, your first thought goes to the children, but our people as well. It's obviously really, really important. So we want that to be kind of the foundation of the experience of people's time working with us. I'm really thinking about what journey they want to go on, how they want to build their skills. And there's so much within the system, particularly as we grow and we get larger and larger, just to even be able to get a view of what your workforce capability is going to be really fundamental and exciting for us to contemplate what that map would look like. And I do think we are evolving how we view adult learning in the organisation. But it really is fundamental because we understand that it's fundamental to the quality of the services that we offer and the impact that our educators and teachers have on children. So we already have quite heavy focus and investment on coaching, mentoring, that sort of relational learning. What I'm really interested in and will be keen to see evolve over the coming months and years is the other methods of learning as well that can help support with that. Obviously, when you're talking about a workforce that is very widely distributed, don't tend to have a lot of time to engage in learning unless it's kind of a really dedicated space. What are the different methods and tools and avenues that we can use to build learning? So not just evolving our practice as teachers and educators and informing our work with children, but also all of those key sort of compliance related learning and bits and pieces as well. So I think there's lots of opportunity to explore, as I said, different ways and methods of doing things, and that's how we're kind of approaching the conversation right now. And obviously in making sure that people at the end of the day spend the majority of their time doing the work that's most impactful for them.
One is kind of, if not now, when. I look back at the decision when we made it. There was some kind of circumstantial factors that made it at the right time. But by delaying that decision was only going to kind of kick the can down the road. Things don't resolve themselves, and we would only have got a more complex timing. So there was that kind of just crack on, which I know is easier said than done. The second is, if I think about vendor selection and the role that having Pinpoint as advisory partner with us, I cannot imagine having to make that decision without that insight. Like the sector is moving so quickly, the marketplace and even within vendors, the offering is changing so rapidly. I would challenge anyone to have a handle on their business as well as a handle on the market at the same time, to the level that you need to make an informed decision. And then the third goes back to implementation is do not skimp on the team to deliver it. And I think we don't have the counterfactual necessarily of doing it on the side of our desk, but we do have this kind of example of what happened when we not only resourced properly in a kind of getting enough bodies taken off BAU, but we also had specialists in that team, a dedicated project manager, a dedicated change manager, a dedicated payroll specialist. Like that, those roles can't be underestimated for the impact that they have, which then feeds the virtuous cycle of, if you can implement well, it kind of removes some of that negative narrative that even if the system's great, if their people's experience as kind of in the change management implementation of it is not bad. They might not look favourably on the system. So just making sure that you nail that would be a big tip.
So I've been asked this question a few times, and funnily enough, as someone who reflects deeply and usually wishes that I could go back and do something again almost immediately after I've done it, no is the answer to that question. And I think the reason it's a no, because I've reflected on this, is I think the time that we invested in it's almost pre-implementation. So even before we got to the point of looking at vendors, that piece of work we went through with Pinpoint to really, really have a good hard look at where we are now and where we want to get to over the next 5 years. So it's not just what are the issues that we have today that we want to fix with the system and put a Band-Aid over it. It's where do we as an organisation want to get to? Having that foundational piece just really kind of set up the kind of building block for everything else that flowed really well from there, and sort of led us down this path of selecting a vendor and, as Stu said, having an adequately resourced project team to really kind of deliver well on what we said we were going to deliver, and also now being at a point where we can build out a roadmap of the next couple of years of really exploring the potential of functionality within the system, and the system will grow with us as we go through that journey.
Can I have a crack at answering this for you? Because one thing I've been reflecting on is the legacy of the project team. So one of the things that we did when we were building that project team is really think very carefully about the technical skills we needed. We now have someone who was in the project team who we are going to fight kind of tooth and nail to hold on to. Gives us a capability in the team and actually in the organisation around automation and like system improvement. And I think that opens up so many avenues. And again, not just for the people team, like people want access to this person because she's amazing, and but because of the capability. And I think that's a key part of the project in its legacy, which wasn't intended. But and then that opens up like a whole range of opportunities that we don't know what they are yet. Other people might talk about AI and automation, and we look to the vendors a little bit to say, kind of help us out there. But then we've got this kind of role that has a similar mindset.
Yes. So it's one person, and it is a kind of shift in the way that people are thinking about how we can solve problems. So it's not necessarily about we're going to put in a person and do this work. We're actually going to think about our processes and the systems and our automations, the things that we can put in place that will allow technology to support what we're doing and do the work that technology can and should be doing, so that people can focus on really kind of building connections and relationships and the people work.
Maybe the only kind of reflection is just the value of being just super deliberate, both in what of the journey you're embarking on, the vendor, and how that journey needs to play out. I think one thing that we would say was inherent in our experience was we were very, very pragmatic, and we held very tightly to some guiding principles that we agreed right at the start that informed our vendor decision, they informed our resourcing, they informed decisions to whether we take on position management or not, they informed go live date decisions. And we always came back to these 5 kind of guiding principles as a way just to hold the integrity through, and we didn't let it fray.
So my reflection, and this is something I didn't on my list of cool stats, which is so hot off the press, our annual engagement survey closed Friday last week.
Wow.
And what we saw in relation to a question around systems and processes supporting us to get our work done effectively for our people managers was an 8% increase in positive responses on that question. So for me, it's not a financial metric, but it actually speaks to literally what you were just saying, Stu, how deliberate we were in the approach and the execution of this implementation. The fact that our people leaders have kind of responded to this in a positive way. So they're seeing this as a tool, which, I'm not going to lie, a lot of people struggle to pick it up and, they don't want to learn something new and they don't want to do things differently. The fact that they're recognizing that it's actually supporting their work, to me, that's probably like the biggest win.